Welcome to the very first Synam Fireside chat. It's quite a timely chat this month as it is October and it's also Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We are joined today by Synam's very own Madeline Howard, Director of Synam and Socio-Technical Manager at Sygenta, and Mark Roberts, Account Leader of Cyber and Intelligence at Capita. So, today's topic is the human side of cybersecurity. So, Mark, Madeline, take it away.
Mark, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really chuffed to be having this conversation with you, especially because it's on a theme and a topic that I'm really passionate about. So when we think about people in security, a lot of organisations, unfortunately, will still think that it's all about technology, and they'd argue that it's about using technology to be smarter, to defend yourselves against kind of risks and threats. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think there is a tendency for people to think of technology first, and I'm not 100% sure why that is. I mean, it could be that people think that cyber, therefore, must be a deeply technical problem because it's we just don't. Lots of people don't really sort of understand it, so they might think, okay, so therefore I need a technological response. I think there's also a tendency that actually, if you're the beleaguered chief information security officer, it's relatively easy to show a bit of progress by saying, look, I've just gone out and bought this new product, this new bit of technology. It's quite tangible, it's quite easy to see. But I think most people would recognize that it's people are probably the most important consideration in that whole environment. I mean, I think it's the NCSC who produced the stats that say something like 90% of all cyber incidents have a human component to them. So it sort of strikes to me quite clearly, well, let's focus on the people a bit more rather than on the technology. And I think we've probably seen that more and more over the last few months of the pandemic as well, where actually almost overnight the whole entire UK workforce became a remote worker, and that presented a whole number of challenges for users and the enterprise as well, in terms of how do you train them, how do you educate them, what are the new risks, how do you make them, how do you yes, we'll allow you to work remotely and provide you with the technology, but actually how do we provide that sort of safety net and educate the user of the various security threats, which changed almost overnight.
Yeah, because it's quite interesting that, things that companies have been planning to maybe, remote working, will implement that in 3 months. Within the space of 24 hours, it was, we need to get this in place. And suddenly there was that real emphasis on doing things properly for your people. But of course, when we're talking about cybersecurity and security inside of an organization, we're not just talking about, making sure that the security team are the people who understand security, are we?
No, I think that's absolutely right. I think there was a time a while back where users would sit at their desks and say, "Oh, security. Well, we've got a security team over there. They can worry about that. That's their job to deal with." I'd like to think that has changed, but it probably not quite there totally yet, if I'm honest. But I think it's one of those things that's absolutely everybody's responsibility. It's up to all of us to be aware of the threats that are out there and how to behave, how to look out for those threats, and how to manage the risks accordingly. I always, in my head, I sort of often draw the analogy between what's happening in cyber over the last sort of 10, 15 years or so to what must have happened in health and safety in the workplace sort of 30, 40 years ago, and you look how strong that culture is now in a health and safety context, and that's where we've got to aspire to be in terms of security, and probably beyond actually. But actually, some of those things there about making it everybody's problem, as it were, for everybody to deal with, for everybody to be trained and educated on, and I think even more than that, having that sort of really strong security culture within the organization, so that people are actually, in a nice way, pulling each other up and saying, look, what you're doing there, that's not very good, that's not very safe, let me help you see if we can find a different way of doing things. So yeah, I think I sense we've still got a journey, we've still got some sort of way to travel on that, but we're definitely heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it's about, making not security people's problem, but something that they feel they can do and they can do it really well, and making it so that when they're working in teams, they're able to, you know, oh, that didn't go so well, but here I can help you do it better, and kind of work together to build each other up. So how do you think organizations though can get people to care about security? Because if we're saying it's not just the security team's job to care, how do we go about making sure, you know, people in marketing, people in finance, how do you think organizations can make them care about security?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great question. I think it's two key words leap off the page to me there. It's leadership and communication. Leadership is absolutely about driving this down from the top of the organization, showing a very clear commitment from the leadership and the exec team to this, that this isn't optional. This has got to happen. This is part of our business, of our way of working. And then I think it's about communication as well. It's about that sort of constant communication, education, awareness. I think that one of the challenges with communication is that in a security context, it's very easy to be negative.
Yeah,
in that
definitely.
sort of communication sense. It's very easy to say, okay, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that, and you can't do that. And how as a human being that will sort of how for most people you would react to that. You go, okay, well, what can I do then? And so as we do that communication, we need to think about how we turn that into the the other way around, how we turn it into the positive, how we turn it into the benefit. We do this not because we want to be on the front page of the Daily Mail, but actually we do this because we see this as critical to the success of our business. We're going to outshine our competitors because we're going to do it much better than they are, and therefore, good things will happen as a result of that. I think the other thing about communication is that cyber impacts all of us in our non-working lives as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And so actually making any communication, any education, any training you do relevant to that whole outlook on cyber, not just within the work context, but within the whole context, I think and then embeds that learning a lot better, and those messages stick. So why would we behave any differently at 5:10 on a Friday as opposed to 5 o'clock at Friday when we're still at work? It sort of doesn't make any sense, but we need to think about how we communicate that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely about making security an enabler for people, enable them in their personal life to be more secure, feel more confident when online, and those behaviors will ultimately transpire into their professional life. People don't, the way people behave, some people will have a working behavior and a home behavior, but ultimately things like that is embedded within how they actually behave.
And I again, coming back to sort of current, the last few months of this slightly unusual world, I think that's come out really strongly actually as security as enabler, because it's enabled a lot of us to work remotely, and it's no longer a blocker. And and I think too early to tell, I suspect, but actually I think the sort of the perception of the security teams within enterprises has probably changed as well.
Yeah.
They're probably seen less. I know it's a very sort of old stereotype, but they're often seen as the people who say no to things, block things for security, and using security as a reason. But actually, my hypothesis is that that they're actually now seen a bit more as sort of those enablers. They enable us to do things. And picking up on something else you said a minute ago in terms of the pandemic, I think what it has done is accelerated a lot of things. So a lot of organizations thinking about various things like home working, digital transformation. I think businesses are now realizing, say, well, we need to be more resilient. We need to, speed up our transformation to that digital world, and with that comes security, and and so on and so on. So.
Definitely. So if you are going to give an organisation who's probably thinking, we need to look at cybersecurity as an enabler, we probably need to have a different approach to it. What would you say are your kind of 3 top tips to say, right, these are 3 things that you should look at to get you on that journey to really embedding cybersecurity as an enabler for your business?
Embed it as an enabler. I would look at. I would definitely look at sort of security culture.
Yeah.
Which is quite, 2 words, quite easy, but actually it's a very hard thing to measure and to change. But I think until you try and understand it, you're sort of shooting in the dark a little bit. I think I would look at, I'll be, sort of advising people training and education. Look at how you do that training and education piece. Again, some of the things we've just talked about there in terms of making it positive, saying it as an enabler. And the final thing, well, I think I'd look at, recruitment actually, and both recruitment of your security professionals, but actually, recruitment of your people more generally. And I think I'd start to bring in, security thoughts and thinking into that sort of whole recruitment process.
Yeah, definitely. When you're kind of onboarding new people,
absolutely.
Don't have security, like you said, seen as the department of no. Really, how can security enable you to do XYZ, work from home securely, engage with your colleagues securely, and get that, so from the get-go they know that we're a culture where we're organization where actually culturally we care about how secure you are when you're online. So that kind of ties in really nicely to thinking about, as an industry, we talk a lot about skills, and, as Synam, we do lots with young people. So people say there's a skill shortage, and there's lots of debate about, what are the right skills for the cybersecurity industry now, because it is so vast. Kind of what are your thoughts on that, do you think?
Another great question. I think in a nutshell, yes, there is a shortage of skills. And I think I'd say 2 things. One, I'll recount a conversation I had with my sons are at school, teenagers. I had a conversation with their head teacher about ICT, teaching of ICT in the school. And I said, look, I don't think you teach ICT in the school. And he said, yeah, but all the kids know how to use computers to do their history and their geography. And it was quite an interesting conversation, because I said, that is interesting, but you're missing a fundamental point there, is that, what we're missing in this country are not the people who can use computers, but actually the people who can take them apart and work out how they work and re-engineer them. And from a security point of view, obviously work out how, where they can be defeated and where their vulnerabilities are. So I think fundamentally we're missing a we've got a shortfall in terms of number of people doing computer science or similar degrees or apprenticeships in this country. I think the other thing I'd say about skills is cyber's a bit different, I think. And actually, I've just talked there about computing skills, but do we need, does everybody in the cyber industry need to have, a computing degree? No, absolutely not.
That's it.
And we need to think more creatively, more imaginatively about where we're recruiting, what we're looking for in terms of people, and how we're training them up. I've just talked for the first few minutes here about people and the importance of people. So, actually people who know how people tick, psychologists.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We've spoken about good communication. You need people who can communicate messages and who can, make those messages transpire so that people really engage with them. And I think that's really the interesting kind of space that we're in now with the industry, because we're actually going, do you know what? We actually need people from all backgrounds. We can't pinpoint the skills we need now, because whether you've got geography degrees, history degrees, psychology degrees, you're all bringing in something that we're needing to help grow the industry.
It's and in many ways it's about attitude and approach, rather than it's about particularly about knowledge. I used to work with a colleague of mine, and he used to recruit people for security cyber jobs. And he said, and I asked him one day, I said, how do you recruit people, and what's the interview? And he says, well, it's very simple. We give them a router. We give them a router in a box. It comes with the instruction manual. And I said, okay, fine. And he said, I said, so what happens? And he said, well, if the candidate takes the router out of the box, then reads the instruction manual, they've failed. He says, if the candidate takes the router out of the box and immediately starts to sort of get his screwdriver out or her screwdriver out and start taking it apart, they're in.
Yeah. that inquisitive approach. And
absolutely. I know that's
yeah.
quite an extreme example. I don't think it was quite that extreme, by the way.
I don't think all organisations recruit via recruiters.
But you know, there is quite a strong element of truth in that, and we just need to think a bit more, literally out of the box, a bit more creatively about the type of people and those skills. Because for me, knowledge is something you can learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can, we can impart knowledge upon people if they have the the ability to receive it and to do something with it, and the willingness and the desire to actually sort of learn it in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that's something we see when we're engaging with young people, is that young people are so moldable, and the more that you excite them about the cybersecurity industry, the more knowledge that they take on, but also they become really inquisitive about it, and they just keep wanting to learn more. So kind of thinking about young people, but also, we've just gone through, and we're still going through the global pandemic. There's a lot of people who are potentially going to lose their jobs. What do you think we can do as an industry to help reskill those people who will be, very talented people, but reskill them, but also, engage with those young people? What as an industry do you think we can do, on top of what we're already doing, or is it trying new things because we're not doing enough?
Yeah, I think it probably. I mean, there's more of the, if you like, the standard things we would do, and I know you guys, for instance, do lots of great stuff with outreach into schools, and we've got to do more of that and continue that. I think again, we're probably missing a trick a little bit, in that we're sort of coming at it from our own viewpoints, I suppose, and you think, okay, I need a cybersecurity expert. Okay, fine. So I need somebody with a a computing degree or something like that, and you see how your sort of thinking just goes along sort of conventional lines. I think we just always need to sort of challenge ourselves and look, let's be more creative, because the types of people we are trying to attract into the industry are probably nothing, well, they're certainly nothing like me, I hope, anyway. And they might be different to you, Madeline. But we need to sort of be more open-minded about that, and, as I say, be more creative and more innovative in terms of how we find, how we select, how we attract people in. I think in terms of attraction, again, it's about that communication message, which is we've got people like us, others, colleagues, we've got to evangelize about a career in cyber, what it means. I think, again, you talk about cybersecurity, and people either sort of glaze over, or they see you as a bit of a technical geek who sits in the corner, that sort of stuff. We've just got to break down those stereotypes. We've got to show people that we're human, that it's fun, and that there's a great career opportunities on Sky. I was thinking about this beforehand. We need a Brian Cox or something like that for the cyber world. And if there is one out there already, I apologize, but we need somebody like that. We need somebody who's like TV friendly, who can explain
and almost revamps it a little bit.
Absolutely.
I feel like we
make it cool.
We need
make it
a
really
bit
cool,
of
and make it attractive to
the whole industry needs a marketing campaign, so we're not seen as dark, scary, and something that's not for everyone. Definitely.
Yep, absolutely. No, I think if we could find somebody like that, that would be great.
Oh, fantastic. Mark, it's been lovely to chat to you. Really interesting. I hope anyone who's watching this has found it interesting. If you've got any comments, we'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to follow us on our socials. On Twitter, we're at @SynamHub, where we'll be sharing more fireside chats, updates on what we're doing in the community, and up and coming events. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Madeline.